Greetings, viewer. Today, something just perhaps a little bit different, out of the ordinary. Part nostalgia, part upcoming anniversary of a particular event. In about just over 2 years' time, will be the 150th anniversary of the Battle of the Little Bighorn, or as I believe the Native Americans call it, the Battle of the Greasy Grass. As you can tell from the introduction to this video, I do have a bit of a collection of books and games collected over the years. That's only a small selection on this particular battle that to this day continues to fascinate, captivate, and let's be honest, cause a great deal of raging controversy. Americans in particular, those in the pro-Custer camp, I'm talking here about who's to blame for the inverted commas disaster. There's those in the pro-Custer camp who seem to want to lob extreme vitriol at his two sub-commanders, Reno and Benteen. Likewise, those who support either Reno or Benteen are very unsavoury in their comments towards Custer. I might share a few of my thoughts once we finish this unboxing. I honestly believe that they all made mistakes, but there was one factor that none of them could have anticipated. However, more of that later. Anyway, so with the anniversary of Little Bighorn coming up in Australia in the 1960s, when I was a wee lad in primary school, about to enter high school, perhaps like a large part of the Western world, grew up on the ubiquitous Western. Everything from TV shows such as Davy, well, apart from movies of course, TV shows like Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, mine's gone blank, I'm getting old, Bonanza, Gunsmoke, The Rifleman, Custer of the West, Rin Tin Tin, which I thought at that time was made in the 60s, but Googling away, I've discovered it was actually made in the 1950s. But the Western was very much, along with some local content, a lot of British content, particularly British comedy. But the Western was staple fare for a young fella growing up here in Australia back in those days. And with the anniversary of the Little Bighorn coming up, I thought I'd like to do something. Now, I didn't want to go full bore, Pony Wars, 600 plus Indians. I know there's a few of you that have taken to Pony Wars, and all I can say is may your God go with you, creating the size of forces that are apparently required. As you've seen, a few years back, I did purchase a set of rules meant to cover the Indian Wars. Also, perhaps to the surprise of those of you who know my opinion of black powder, I bought the Black Powder second edition. It does have a rather interesting Indians War or Native Americans War, Plains War scenario in the back of the book. And as much as the basic black powder, I think, isn't even remotely resembling a Napoleonic battle, I think it may work well for the Plains Wars. And yes, look, please, before you all drown me in comments about I don't know what I'm talking about and I need to invest in a brain. Yes, I'm aware many of you love black powder for your Napoleonic period. I think it could be a very good game just with a few tweaks. And perhaps I may be being unfair. It may be the people that I were playing it with at the time. They were very much power gamers. A nod to history, but it was all about winning. Anyway, let's not go too much into that. But anyway, the point of all this verbiage, back in, I believe the year was 1968, my dad, God bless him, he only had about 4 years left to live, but he purchased for me a game called Battle of the Little Bighorn by Waddingtons. And it was a bit of a favourite. Got given away to a nephew and then disappeared into the mists of time. I think sadly it may have eventually gone to a tip a few years ago. But anyway, it was something that I'd always associated with my dad because of that particular happy memory. And while I was scouring for figures for my 15mm Napoleonic collection on eBay, I discovered that there was the odd copy of that particular game, the one that my dad had bought me back in 1968. And I got the idea that, well, maybe I could replace the plastic figures with the metal figures, the 28mm figures. Those of you who've been following my channel for a little while, excuse the zoom, will know that I started out, they're actually still not quite finished, I've got to do the war paint on them, the Comanche 28mm collection. I thought maybe I could substitute the plastic figures for those. Obviously I'd need to get some cavalry, etc. And yes, they are Comanche, but I wasn't going to be too fussy, and I thought maybe I could buy a few Foundry miniatures. I think they're actually Cheyenne. The other option, my good friend David, recently over in England for Salute, went to Pendraken and came back with, as you can see there, 4 packs of 10mm Native American Indians. And I thought, yeah, maybe I could actually, rather than just having the single plastic figure, make a base with, half a dozen of those on it. Now, those of you who've never seen the game will be saying, what the hell's he talking about? Get on with it, Ian. What it is, it was one of the first board games I'd ever discovered where, rather than just counters, you actually had physical plastic figures that you moved around the board. Anyway, I just thought, yeah, Little Bighorn coming up in a couple of years. Not too big an investment of time or money to replace the plastic figures, or even, just use this particular game as a basis. So I thought, yeah, look, why not? Give it a shot. Now, typical of Australia and eBay, I think the game itself only cost me, I think it was about £17 or £20. I've no idea what condition it is. So it cost me about 30 or 40 Australian dollars to actually buy the physical game, and then cost me over 60, close to 70 to have it shipped to here in Australia. Thanks again, on top of that, eBay, rather than just allowing the 10%, we get a 10% tax here in Australia. Rather than just charging that on the actual purchase price, good old eBay go ahead and slug you 10% on the whole cost, including the postage, which, as I say, here in Australia, that's often more than buying the actual blasted item. Hence why I don't buy too much off eBay these days. Anyway, we're almost 10 minutes in and you're still looking at a black plastic bag. I have no idea what's underneath there. So let's open it up and see what we've got. I don't know any more than any of you how well this is going to be packaged. I'm going to try and keep this in shot. might get my arm poking across a fair bit. I'm sorry about that. As I've often said, Cecil B. DeMille, I ain't. I've no idea what condition, apart from the few pictures that I got, I've no idea what condition this is going to be in. This has come all the way from England, airmail. It's a lot smaller than I remember, although I sort of half expected that. Those of you who perhaps might be a bit older, like myself, dinosaurs, if you go back often to childhood memories, old homes that you grew up in, etc., etc., perhaps like myself, you're often struck by how small things look, well, compared to how you remember them, which I guess is only natural because you're now twice the size you were. Now, how are we going here? I'll come back to the camera. Okay, box doesn't look too bad. Now, this game was first released in 1964. I've got here copyright 1964. That doesn't mean this was actually produced in 1964, but it wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have thought more than, I don't know, at most 10 years after, if that. I believe it was made in Australia under license to another company called Murphet. Anyway, so here's the box. Let's have a look. And the box looks like it's seen better days. Let's try lifting this up a little. Sorry about this, folks. Yeah, lovely shot of the chairs in the background. There we go. Bit of wear and tear on the box, bit of plastic on the side. Oh dear, it has seen better days, this box. Oh well. All right, let's open it up. This is the important part. Let's see what's inside. Okay. The version that was produced here in Australia was just plain cardboard. It didn't have this nice solid back. Now again, don't worry too much if you're not seeing too much in the picture. I will, as in right now, take you on an overview. The board actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. As you would expect, a few little perhaps creases and marks, but actually that's in, for something that's, you know, almost 60 years old, if not 60 years old, that's actually in pretty good shape. Okay. Okay. Okay, now this brings back a lot of memories. This is pretty much the game I got back in 1968. It had the instructions. You can see it's a weighty tome. It had the instructions here on the box. I believe later editions they took the instructions off the box and they put it in put it on some sheets of paper. Now we should have 6 horses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we've got 1 Indian rider there. There should be three of him. So that's 1, 2. Oh yeah, over here. 3. There should be 3 of these chiefs. 1, 2, 3. Yep. So they're all there. Excellent. We've got the flag. Now, those of you in the know will know that Custer's flag at the bottom was actually blue, not white. But this was the flag that came with the game. These aren't the original dice. There was a red one and a blue one, but hey, dice are dice. This is his lordship. Oh dear. His lordship himself. Sorry. You can see there that hand's about to break off. So that needs some glue fairly urgently. We should have 6-foot Indians. Again, 3 firing their rifles and 2 at the side. That's correct. And then we should have 6 standing and firing. Yep. 6 standing and firing, 3 kneeling and firing, and 2 officers. So there you go. The game's all there. Okay. Wow. What a bit of nostalgia. In my mind, Dad, you're looking down. I'm going to spend a little bit of time just soaking that into my mind, some memories. I'll just try putting this down. As I say, the poor old box, it's been there and back again. I'm not surprised I got it, they're cheap. Oh yeah, and I remember this too. The old back of the box. Poor old bit bruised and battered, but what do you expect? I do recall at the time, just going back to the artwork for a minute before we push the game to a side and remind me to check the size of the figures. Before we push the game to the side, and I'll talk for a little bit about General Custer and the Little Bighorn. Seeing all these Indians up the top here and cavalry here, I remember being fairly disappointed opening the box and finding there was only 12 actual Indian figures and 9 cavalry figures. Again, for those of you of my age, good old Airfix. Don't know whether I actually used Civil War figures for Custer, but I know I bought boxes of Airfix Indians. Didn't paint them up or anything like that, but literally flooded the board with lots of figures. So yeah, it was just a teeny bit of a disappointment that there weren't actual more figures in the game, but Right, I'll just pop you back down again. Let's pop the game board over here. Let's see if my suspicions. Let's open up the game board. You've got to admit, it's a quality production. Get Spielberg on the phone. A new star is born here in Australia. Okay. All right, let's have a look. So there's the board. It's not particularly large. Let's go back down again. There you go. Let's see whether... Oh, looking at that straight away, I can see there's no way that a 28mm figure is going to fit on that. Some people said to me, oh, no, 28mm figures will be fine. Yeah. No. Maybe the foot figure. Yeah, to be fair, yeah, the foot figure's okay. But the mounted figures, not within a bull's roar. Actually, while I think of it, let's take one of the original figures, plug him into the horse. Oh, well, there you go. So the original figures are actually much bigger than 28mm. and they are the Indian horse figures. They're overhanging the squares anyway. Ew, I wonder what scale these are. Yeah. Anyway, 20 minutes in of pure crap. So yeah, that's my little trip down nostalgia lane. We'll pause it there, and I might just come back with just a few thoughts on the Little Bighorn and upset everybody. Okay, back in a sec. Okay, let's wrap this up with just a few thoughts. In front of you, of course, is the game now set up. I've applied some super glue to Mr. Custer's hand over there in the middle with the yellow buckskin shirt, which he didn't actually wear at the Little Bighorn. Some officers did, but I've read that Custer didn't. He actually had his blue fireman's shirt on. But anyway, I fixed his hand, carefully applied some tape to the box where the lid had broken. If you perchance maybe in the United Kingdom and you're seeing this and you're thinking, hang on, it's the game that I gave to the hospice to sell for a profit for charity, please rest assured I'm not young, but for as long as I'm still on the planet, this game will be cherished, loved, and bring back a lot of happy memories to this particular old chook. Anyway, just some general thoughts on the whole Little Bighorn debate before I go. We'll never really know exactly what happened. There's conflicting testimony from the Indians or Native Americans. Forgive me, I'll call them Indians for the sake of brevity. And also the cavalry personalities. Weir, the man who's the pro-Custer crowd often say, oh, he's the one bloke that tried to save Custer. And they point to Weir saying, oh, we heard fighting and we sat and did nothing for 2 hours. Really? Let's look at a few facts. Every cavalryman had 100 rounds of carbine and 24 rounds of pistol. If you've got 1,500, 2,000 warriors coming at you, I think you're going to be firing a lot more than one shot every, roughly, what's that, 121 shot a minute. I think you're going to be, and remember that a lot of the survivors said they heard volleys. And that's not me getting stuck into poor old Weir. I think he had the right idea. There are Indians and cavalrymen that claim to be here, there and everywhere. His name escapes me at the minute, but in W.G. Graham's, was it W.A. Graham, sorry, The Custer Myth, he casts severe light on one particular character who is often quoted by the pro-Custer crowd, who was everywhere and saw everything. And likewise, there are Indians, the odd Indian here and there that claim they saw everything and were everywhere. Contradictory testimony on the Indian side. Some Indians said the fight was over as long as it took for someone to eat their lunch, basically, a meal. i.e. fairly quickly, and others said no, the soldiers fought hard and long. And I think I don't think any of them necessarily are deliberately lying or misleading. It's just human nature. We get different impressions of the same event. I think of, in particular, World War II, the grossly overinflated amount of enemy aircraft that are claimed as being shot down. One particular US bomber raid was emphatic that they'd shot down 101 German fighters. Post-war analysis confirms that actually they shot down 2. So yeah, human nature. I believe all 3 commanders made mistakes. God knows I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, trust me. But I feel they all made mistakes. Custer, he wasn't a monster, he wasn't a fool, but it was in his nature. He was too aggressive, he took too many risks, he deployed his commands too far apart, and he lost control of each one of those commands. Reno, completely inexperienced in fighting Indians, possibly PTSD, all these sorts of things that psychological conditions, all these leaders, they'd been through the American Civil War. Who knows what was going on there? In my mind, not a failure that he didn't charge into the village, not a failure that he retreated into the woods. But whether it was inexperience or panic or what, he calls it a charge, I call it a rout. They ran back up the hill with the Indians in hot pursuit. Benteen, overly disgruntled, being sent off on what he considered a wild goose chase, received the message, be quick, bring packs, P.S., bring packs. I'm a huge Benteen fan, but even I'm prepared to admit he was too slow. He thought he'd been sent off on this wild goose chase, and he slowly plodded back. He had to wait for the packs, yes, but as others have pointed out, a commander with initiative, and Benteen was no fool, could have grabbed some ammo off some of the mules, put it on horses, or even just grabbed some of the mules and said, come on. I don't know. I may be talking complete nonsense there, but I've never had to deal with mules, so. But generally speaking, given it was a combat situation, he should have been quicker, coming up to where Reno was. But the actual cause, I feel overwhelmingly, and I alluded to this earlier in the video, and it's often been said, I think 2,000 Indians might have had something to do with it. Exactly. The Indians behaved in a manner, both here, or both not here at my place, but here, here at the Little Bighorn, and about a week or so earlier at the Rosebud Creek. The Indians behaved in a completely unexpected manner. The army expected the Indians to fight, to defend their village, hold it, just as long as the village could skedaddle. That was their point. That's why Custer, I think, wasn't afraid to split his command up, because he thought that the Indians would only fight long enough to actually block the attacking force, and then they would basically pack up, disperse, and they would be lost to the army. 7 or 8 days earlier, Crook was completely rattled. Now, Crook had, I think it was about 900 troopers plus about 200 Indian scouts, give or take. But these Indians were not only aggressive, they were on the offence. They took the fight to the cavalry. Crook was so rattled by this, and remember that out on Crook's left flank, 200 of his cavalrymen almost met the same fate as Custer did, just on a week later, a bit over a week later, because the Indians massed against those 200, and it was only due to the timely intervention of his Crook's Indian scouts that the Little Bighorn perhaps wasn't produced 8 days earlier. Crook was so rattled by this that he withdrew to a camp where he awaited reinforcements and further, perhaps more importantly, further supplies. And I think something that's often overlooked is that the Indians not only didn't skedaddle, but took the fight to Custer, to Reno, to Benteen. But I think that what's often overlooked is that after they'd wiped out General Custer's command, or I know he wasn't actually a general, but after they'd wiped out his command, they besieged 300 to 400 men up on Reno's Hill for 24 hours. And the only reason that I've ever read that they broke it off was because they saw that Terry and Gibbons' column was coming in. Then they decided to break up and disband. And that was an army-wide attitude that the Indians would skedaddle. Now, I don't want to get into an argument with anyone. I don't think Custer was a fool. I think he was a risk taker. I don't think Reno was a coward. I think he broke under the inexperience of fighting Indians, seeing the Indians come out at him. I believe he panicked and retreated. I don't think Benteen left Custer out to dry. He thought when he first got to Reno, his question was, where's Custer? Nobody knew because George hadn't kept everyone informed. Remember, couriers go two ways. George could have sent out couriers to say, where are you, what are you doing, etc., etc. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble. But yeah, in basis, the reason I believe was not because of Reno's cowardice or Benteen's indifference or even George's risk-taking. It was due to the highly unusual, aggressive and offensive nature of the Indian, Native American tactics. Anyway, let's wrap it up there. I'm going to edit this heavily, cut out all the bits where I talk drivel, which is probably 99% of it. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to have a bit of a think now, perhaps play through the game, again, bit of memory. Maybe inwardly just shed a little bit of a tear or two as I remember Mum, Dad. Yeah, thanks Mum and Dad. And think about what to do with the game. Whether to simply replace the figures in front of you with 28mm figures, whether to increase that number of figures, or also whether to replace the individual figures with small stands of either 10, 15mm or even 1/72 figures where there's 2, 3 or more figures on that particular stand to give that effect of mass that I so wanted when I first opened the game on Christmas Day way back in 1968. Thank you everyone for your time. Hope you enjoyed that. If not, at least perhaps as a bit of a paint along. Take care everybody, look after yourselves, and hopefully next video not too far away. Thank you. Bye-bye.